Well, hello, everybody. I'm here with Seniz Sagol, our head of Turkish office, and today we're going to be talking about the uh, clinical trial landscape in Turkey, uh, really in-depth discussion on the particulars of how to run clinical trials in Turkey, and Seniz is probably the best resource you can find to answer some of our questions. So with no further ado, I will start with my first question, Shanice. Can you just provide an overview of the landscape of clinical research in Turkey?
Of course. Thank you, Vlad, for this opportunity. There's a remarkable just transformation in the clinical research industry in Turkey for the last 2 decades, actually. The healthcare system is robust in Turkey, and we are just progressing every month in terms of different procedures and patient recruitment and site readiness for the clinical research in Turkey. Actually, our regulations have been updated on an ongoing basis in order to meet the international guidelines, as well as there is an ongoing training programs with the investigators, site staff, all of the industry workers in the clinical research to just grow the clinical research in our industry. We are working all together in Turkey. Actually, there is a very good connection between the sponsors, regulatory authorities, ethics committee members, investigators, institutions, CROs, and all other vendors in Turkey. So we communicate frequently with each other professionally, and we just continue workshops and meetings on an ongoing basis and just discuss the experience. So the reason for this is to grow and just to adapt the Turkish environment as a better place every day.
Thank you, thank you. So if you were to point out the main advantages of running clinical trials in Turkey, why would international sponsors and CROs come to Turkey to conduct clinical research?
Actually, I can start with the population. There is a very high population in Turkey, over 85 million, from 81 cities. So the number of the patient population, as well as the number of the hospital number, is quite high in Turkey. Therefore, it's very beneficial to find the patients to recruit into the clinical studies in Turkey. And there is an unmet need because the clinical research is growing every day, and there are too many treatment naive patients in the country, which needs more clinical trials, medication, and so on. The second part is the investigator quality. Actually, there are very qualified investigators which have very good experience in clinical research in many different therapeutic areas. So they are just taking over the clinical studies in a very high quality and with good patient numbers. This is the second. As well, Turkey is a country for the rare diseases. So for all of the rare disease studies, the rare diseases are not rare in here. So we can just find many patients in here for the rare diseases. I think when we look at the cost and the budget, it's reasonable when we compare with the Western Europe and US and some of the Eastern European countries. So there is a cost effectiveness in the country as well as the regulations are really international. And we have been receiving ongoing support from the government in order to grow the clinical research industry in the country.
Thanks, Shanice. You mentioned that the regulatory environment is evolving. I know that there have been some recent changes. Do you mind highlighting some of the important points in what has changed in the regulatory environment?
Yeah, actually, the last amendment came to the regulation was in 2023. The reason for the regulatory amendments in Turkey is, first of all, to accelerate the steps in the startup and also to just be more familiar with the international guidelines. So all of the steps were just taken into consideration in order to accelerate and make the process more simple and more quick in order to make Turkey an attractive country into clinical research.
Thank you. Thank you. So, talking about regulatory requirements, uh, what are the key points? What are the key approval processes for both ethics committees and for regulatory authorities, the Ministry of Health, and what are the timelines that are currently observed in Turkey for clinical trial registration?
Yeah, I will briefly explain a situation in Turkey, how we just get the approvals and how we just start the clinical trials and for the maintenance. So we have ethics committee and Ministry of Health. Ministry of Health, Turkish Drug and Medical Devices Agency is responsible for the clinical research department activities. Actually, we for the multi-center trials, we need to select one national coordinator in Turkey, which is an principal investigator, and we go to their ethics committee for the initial and maintenance submissions. Uh, all of the ethics committees, there are ethics committees under every hospital in majority of the hospitals in Turkey. And these ethics committees meet twice a month and just send their written approvals by paper copies. And just after the meetings, they decide on the clinical outcome of this submission. Also, Ministry of Health submission is made in parallel. It's done from an electronic system, and the Ministry of Health, there is no meeting, so the regulator officers are meeting this, just reviewing these trials in their web system. And we need to get an EC approval, and then we need to submit this EC approval to regulatory authority in order to receive our last permission. So this is the approval process. This takes approximately 3 or 4 months. It can be less and it can be a little bit more depending on the protocol complexity. But ECs are just meeting in every 15 days, and for the regulatory, they need to respond in the 35 working days. After that, we need to have an import license. If we need to import the medication from outside of the Turkey, it takes another 7 to 10 days to receive the import license. So basically, we just submit the required documentation and the quantity of the IP that will be imported to Turkey. For the institutions, they have a contract procedure. It is an independent procedure from the regulator and ethics. All of the institutions have contract officers or related person in their contract department. So contract negotiation can start anytime within the submission, but usually the approvals and the signatures can place after the final regulatory approval. This is a parallel activity, so we do not lose too much time during the contract reviews in Turkey. Basically, this is the process, regulatory process in Turkey.
Thank you. Thank you. So one thing that we're often asked is, how do you ensure quality, especially for the sponsors that have never been to, let's say, Turkey, have never run a clinical trial in Turkey? How do you maintain quality and patient and subject safety in clinical trials in Turkey? Can you give us a few points about this?
Yes, of course. As I mentioned, Turkey's regulation is very similar to the international guidelines. We have one regulation and one GCP guideline, and in attachment to that, we have more than 20 different guidelines for different aspects of the clinical trial regarding the patient safety documentation, IP meetings, investigator product, and so on, so on. So with these guidelines, really detailed information is kept under these guidelines, and all of the investigators, CROs, and sponsors should comply with it. For the patient safety, Ministry of Health is taking some questions from the initial approval, because from the patient documentation, insurance policy, and all other like documentation, they put patient on the top of everything. So we can only get approval if all of the patient documentation are inapplicable with the regulation. We have too many audit experience. These are FDA inspections, EMA inspections, sponsor audits, and different kind of audits. So with regards to the investigator side, they have really a good experience with audit and inspection, and our results are really good in the majority of these inspections and audits. Ministry of Health has an inspection department, so they also have released some of the documentation and they can inspect the clinical sites anytime. As well as there is a ongoing training programs in Turkey. Sponsors, CROs, investigators, institutions can just work with each other and can apply GCP training programs to Ministry of Health. So we have certified GCP and other advanced clinical research trainings through the year, and it happens, I think, many times in 1 year for the last 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate this. In terms of, you mentioned the inspections. Off the top of your head, do you know whether Turkey is on par with, let's say, Central Eastern Europe, Western Europe, North America in terms of the number of findings? Have you guys been able to collect that data, or is it too early to say?
There isn't a released finding, but from the inspection I just observed, the findings were usually minor findings. I didn't come across with a critical finding in an inspection, but we don't have such a database for the resulting of the inspections. But it's under FDA, EMEA databases and Turkish regulatory database. It is with the authority.
Wonderful, wonderful. And in terms of recruitment, you mentioned obviously very robust recruitment, significant interest from both investigators and patients. And being that you ran multiple international programs in the past, how would you rank Turkey in terms of their recruitment potential?
In many therapeutic areas, for example, oncology, hematology, neurology, cardiology, infectious diseases, and many more, Turkey has been ranked on the top of the first high enrolling country in many different studies. So we don't have that much issues in the patient recruitment. I mean, if the site has been evaluated good on the feasibility process, really recruitment is going well. There are some reasons because first of all, our patient population is quite high. As well, the investigators who accept the clinical trial are really focused on recruiting and performing a trial. So it's also important for their scientific network and also with their treatment of the patients. As well, Ministry of Health has a database, which is kap.gov.tr. So there is a database for the patients. They can search for their indications and can find clinical trials and also the hospital who is conducting that clinical trial. So there are some tools for the patients as well. In the coming years, patients are more informed about the clinical trials, and also they can search and ask to be involved in the different kind of trials.
Thank you. So one thing that we kind of came across and maybe stumbled upon was the situation with the clinical trial coordinators. It was when we started our activities there. It was a little bit unusual compared to other countries. So maybe you can shed some light on what is the situation and how it really works in Turkey, which is somewhat different from some of the other locations.
Yeah, clinical trial site coordinators are just delegated with the same activities for all of the international global site coordinators. However, many hospitals, not all, doesn't have employment of the site coordinator employment type. In these cases, we CROs and sponsors are working with the SMOs and just having contracts with the SMOs directly, and the SMOs are providing site coordinators to the investigator sites. It is still under investigator's responsibility to just have all of the delegation with the site coordinator. There is a specific guideline which is an attachment to regulation. So this is a regulated activity, and all of the site coordinators are being notified to the Ministry of Health in advance before they start any activity. These have some advantages. Of course, it's a separate budget. It can be used either a part of the grant budget or a separate budget can be used for Turkey. But in these cases, the site coordinators are more flexible and they are working on a performance metrics and delivery because they are dedicated with a approximate time. So there are advantages. For example, data entries, query resolutions are going fast in Turkey because we are arranging the site coordinators who have sufficient time for the trial.
Yeah, I mean, when when we figured it out, it turns out that if you actually have a direct contract with a site coordinator or with an SMO, you actually can demand more because they're sort of becoming your employees in some way. So, yeah, it was very interesting to learn about this.
Yeah. Actually, this is not an employee. They are still under the principal investigator. But for the communication and delegation is of course more easy.
Right, right. But we are paying them, or the
Yes.
sponsor is paying them. So that's a little bit of a difference. So wonderful. So I know you've been in clinical research in Turkey for many years and held some very, very high positions. Off the top of your head, what is the success story that is worth sharing with our viewers? Maybe one or two sort of examples of why research in Turkey is really something that they should consider.
Yeah, there are many success stories, especially oncology, hematology, neurology. These have been very successful patient recruitment and also with very good audit results. But for rare disease studies, I have seen some different, more like quick timelines with the rare disease approvals. Because I mean, Turkey is unique with the rare disease indications, and we have very, very short timelines with the AC and regulatory approvals for the rare disease studies, as I start recall, and as well the investigators' contribution in the protocol. So they really work closely with the sites, just CRAs and all of the sponsor staff, and they can contribute with the protocols, protocol amendments, and also the patient pool and everything. So I really just remember very good patient rare disease studies examples where these patients really need this medication quickly, and I have just seen many treated patients, and it's really nice to see it in Turkey because rare disease treatment is so difficult in everywhere of the world.
Thank you. Shanice, I guess last question. In your opinion, what does the future hold for Turkey as a clinical trial hub?
I see the future bright, very bright, and I expect a high number of changes in the upcoming years because there's still growth in Turkey. So we didn't use still the patient pool, all of the investigator institution pool. Every day there is a newly trained and qualified investigators attending in the clinical trials. As well as there are more CRAs, site coordinators, and startup specialists are joining into our industry. And we have 81 cities, but from not from all cities we have sites. So we are growing in every city, in every just part of the country. So I expect more studies coming, and there are more studies coming. If you look at the clinicaltrials.gov and other databases, you can see this growth, and it will continue. We are not still at that time point. As well as we can expect more technologies in Turkey because of the patient pools and also databases. And we expect more clinical trial units, centers, maybe a centralized manner in this kind of managing the clinical trial. There are still activities ongoing from the different stakeholders. And I think that there will be a future very positive change in Turkey, and we will still continue contributing part in the clinical trials and healthcare system.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Shanice. I hope this was useful for our viewers. And we plan on updating our viewers about any new changes in Turkey that do come once in a while. We just recently did an update on, the 2023 new guidelines. And so please stay tuned. And if you have any questions, we would be very happy to answer them. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Shanice.
Thank you a lot. It was a really good opportunity to talk about Turkey. So thank you very much. Have a good day too.